Okay, so this video is going to be a little bit longer, a little bit more in depth. We're going to be diving into the step sequencer. This is a tutorial for those of you who may not have used it very much, all the way up to those who have used it quite a bit. We're going to hopefully either refine some of your skills, teach you something new, or perhaps just be a good review. But this is an in-depth tutorial looking at the step sequencer. So what I love about the step sequencer is how much we can do with this in the rhythm world. We can use it for things far beyond that, but we're going to mostly look at this in terms of the foundations of creating a beat, and specifically we're going to be looking at this in terms of the percussion element, the drums, electronic drums, or whatever else you want. So right this moment, all I have in this project are two tracks. One of them is this Mystic Groove, which is a drum machine designer track. And then I have this keys part. And the keys are being triggered. You'll see this here. This is the Reason Rack plugin with their new chord sequencer, which is pretty cool. I'm going to be using it on and off. But we're not looking at that today specifically. I just wanted to show you that's what you're going to be hearing here in the background. So we have the step sequencer. This is one of our 4 primary editor views, and that we can get to with our little scissor key at the top or the E key on our typing keyboard. And you'll see in different situations you'd have the piano roll available, or the score, or the smart tempo. But right now, because we have a step sequencer region, that's all we have available here of these choices. We can't switch it over to the score mode without doing a conversion. Okay, so down here, let's go through the interface for just a few minutes because there are a number of things to look at and think about. And let me just create a brand new track. This is just an empty instrument track. And what I want to do is load an instrument here, and we'll go down to the drum machine designer, and this pulls up an empty designer. So this is an amazing instrument which we're not going to explore again in this tutorial since we're looking at the step sequencer, but I will show you how we got to it. And once this is loaded, I'm going to put my focus up here in the kit part of that. This little triangle here tells us what we're going to focus on from our library. And so I clicked on that one for the empty kit. And now you'll see we have all the kits that are here. And we could just pull open if we wanted to an 808. And then that opens up that kit in here, which we could then go through and actually hear all the files, edit them, work on them, and program them. You'll notice the minute I select one of these, our little focus point switches over to one of the actual individual instruments. And so now I'm into there and I can go through and fine tune our selection, or I can go back and go to the main drum machine designer focus point and choose an entirely different kit, the 606, 909, or any of these other options. So we can come through and pick anything. Go through, customize it up here in the drum machine designer, but we'll explore that in a little bit. The minute we have that, and let's mute our original up there, then we can come through and you'll see we have piano roll, score, step sequencer, or the smart tempo all available. But the minute, and I want to make sure I'm at the beginning of my project for this, the minute I start adding in an actual step, it creates the region. You could also create it in other ways, but this is the easiest of the ways, is just to start. Now, I said to go back to the beginning. If we start it here, you'll see it starts it halfway through. So that's why I went back to the beginning. You can move it, obviously. It's not like you're stuck there, but it's a nice way just to get that in the right place. Now, the simplest functionality here is to click and add steps. Full disclosure, I have an iPad in front of me and I'll be using this to a certain extent here because it has the full step sequencer. If something appears and I'm talking, it's because I'm using that screen if you don't see the mouse moving. So I think that this is one of the best pairings of any particular hardware and software matchup here, the Apple iPad with Apple Logic, because we have this amazing app which allows me just to come through and do all kinds of programming on the screen with my finger, and I don't have to always necessarily get that exactly right. So let's start just by creating a simple pattern. So super simple. We can just go through, drop the notes wherever we want them to, and that's the first part of this. The next part then becomes all of these other features that we have, and I want to break down as many of them as makes sense in this introductory type video so that you can start to do a lot with it. So first things first, these little arrows along the side, I'm going to come through and open it up, and you'll see we have as a default velocity, note repeat, note, and octave. But of course, we could come through and add gate, tie, loop start, end, chance, start, offset, step, rate, and skip. So we have even more things that we could show here. Again, I'm actually going to come through here on the iPad and do some of this because it's a little easier. For instance, I can really easily change the velocity with just swiping my finger across it. And the note repeat, which allows us to essentially re-trigger within the actual one step. So then we come up with something like this. And then we can create more interesting patterns. We can also change the notes, and some of these will allow this in the sense that, let me change this first one just up a little bit. So often what will end up there is a change in pitch for this one individual note. It won't switch it to, for instance, a full different sound in the Drum Machine Designer. It's really just triggering that one instrument still, which is the hat. Okay, so I just changed some of the notes numbers. I changed some of the repeats, and then I changed some of the velocities, and it gives it a little bit more interest. And just really creates a lot more of a pattern that is changing over time, is organic. It has interest to it. It's not just a repetitive robot. So let's close that back down. So we could do this with any of these things, but let's look at some of these other buttons along here. So we have the solo button, which solos it out. It doesn't solo out the Drum Machine Designer, just solos out the hi-hat, but leaves all of the other tracks still playing. Then we have the mute, so we can mute it, and it'll actually hide those, which is nice so you don't get confused. And then how quickly do we want this row to be moving? So you can have different rows here moving at different speeds. So I can go 8th note. So if we want one part just to go like half time for a minute or a double time, obviously that one doesn't sound great. 64th won't either. But if we're going along, for instance, and we have this at 16, and let's just option click this region to double it. And on this one, let's switch this one into 8th notes. So for the first one, it's going to go the normal speed. Not only do we get different chords with the Reason chord sequencer, but we get a different pattern with the drums there too. So let's go back to this first one. We also can do different direction. So I can have that play backwards. And so that one row will always go in a different direction. We could have it go forwards and backwards. We get, just variety here. And then we have the shuffle random. Okay, next we have a couple other buttons. We can rotate row steps, which means we just move everything over by one in either direction. And then we can decrease or increase the step values there. Let's undo both of those. And so that's going to allow us to make some changes on a more global scale for somebody. So for instance, let's see, let's do this one. So it lets us start with them all engaged, and then we can disengage them. Okay, so a lot of things right here for each of these different rows. We have like the global controls as well, so we can set everything to be one of a different step value. So we could do 16T, 16 triplet. Cool. We could also do a similar thing with the direction for the entire instrument, and we have the same essentially nudge all values and decrease step values up and down. Over on the side, we have the ability to set a key. We can transpose things, and then we can also set how many steps total do we want. If we want 64, and then if we do that, then we have to shuffle through these using this little screen, or do we just want do one of the other options in different amounts. So with 16 steps, you'll see that it's, no matter how long we drag this out, it's going to repeat those 16 steps. And so you have to kind of think about this amount being different than the amount of the region. And so you always want to make sure you know what the region length is and how many steps are being repeated over and over and over. In addition to that, we do have a few other things which are useful. We have an edit menu, so we can do undo, redo. We have an undo history, all of our normal cut, copy, paste, delete, repeat step, copy row, paste row. So all these different functionality to help us. If we have one that we like, we want to put it someplace else, we can do that. We can do some live recordings, which we're not going to look at too much in this particular tutorial, but we can do some live recording of things into this, which I think is really cool. But we're going to focus on the drawing in for this moment. And then you can see all these other options for transpositions, clearing steps, rows, row values, clear pattern. We can randomize everything, and then we can store as a default pattern template, and then some view options to do that. So, in fact, we can always change our colors for this with the selections that we have. And it's cool, it changes on the iPad app as well. But this allows us, if we want to do something custom, that we can customize it that way. Then the rest of these, we have the show hide pattern browser. So we can actually set our own patterns. We can do patterns that come with this, and then there's some templates. So if you're like, I don't know what I want to do, I don't know how to program things, but I like the concept, then you could use these to program anything that you want. We have an info property, which allows us to essentially go through each of the different layers or types of organization. The full pattern, so we can change things here, including the step rate. All of these things we already looked at, but this is where we can set the swing amount. So we previously looked a little bit at the triplet function, but maybe you didn't think it was really fitting in what you wanted. So we could swing this a little bit. And so we have that ability to change that a little bit. The pattern key, the scale quantize, legato mode, and then which MIDI channel is going to be going out. We can do this for the pattern, the row. You'll see it's a little bit different. We can't swing the row differently than each other one, but we can change the same step rates and where it's going to loop and what MIDI channel it will be on and what it's assigned to. And then individual step. We can change almost all of the different parameters here. So you could do it out here by opening this up, or you could come through here and change some of these parameters. Things like, and you'll see the white line as it's surrounding that one step. So let's change the chance. You won't see a difference there, but you'll see a difference if I click on chance. You'll see now it's not 100%, but it's a 51% chance that step will play. This is actually one of the things I dislike about this. This will change the chance when it's created like this, but then it will repeat the same outcome of that chance every time it gets played. So it's not random every time it gets triggered. It's just randomized when you adjust the percentage. But it's still pretty cool. So we have all these different parts of the properties. Then we have something which we're not going to look at too much, but this is for the step recording, the MIDI input. So you can actually record into this. And with mono mode, it means that I could draw in a note and it will erase other things that are happening. And so sometimes it's great when you're drawing that in. It doesn't actually make it playback in mono, but it's a way to easily make sure you're just getting one note at a time. Say you're using this for a bass part, or say you're doing a hi-hat pattern. You don't want to have two hats hitting simultaneously, etc. Then we have the other mode here. So this is the step on and off mode. Here's the velocity value mode or skip mode. So this allows us to skip something that's happening. We have the step rate, offset, chance. So we can actually do this as our main entry mode up here. The last few things we have here, this is for the pattern live recording, which we're not going over right now. But then we have the preview. That lets us hear it without having to engage the overall transport. We have the vertical zoom, and we have some other zoom functions right here so we can get that looking just how we want it. Okay, a lot of information. I'm sure there's even a few more things in here. I know that there's some advanced things we can do with assigning steps to automation and some other features, but let's talk about this first project, because I don't want you to just have watched the last 20 minutes of this and just be like, whoa, that's too much information. You need to actually open up Logic and create a pattern. because that's how you're going to actually learn how to do it. And so let me talk you through a few things that I would be doing here, just so that you can see this. I'm going to mute this one and go back to my original Mystic Groove, which I had started. It's like this one right here. Let's see. No, I'm in the wrong track. So let's go up here. Make sure I'm actually going to just, let's hide this one for now so I don't accidentally go back into it. Okay, so let's see. This is that second one. And this is one that I was like, I don't know if I really like how that sounds. So for 1 minute, I'm actually going to come through and be like, let's see. I want a hi-hat that's open. And now that I have that, I actually want to come through the rest of my designer here. And I want to add, because this is essentially a stack, I want to add a little bit of the reverb onto that. So we can customize that sound a little bit, but I like a little bit of what's happening. So what I have so far, let me open this up, is even though the velocity is pretty consistent, I have the note repeat changing so that it's giving us that like little, the buzzy sound. So actually I want to come through, I'm going to use my iPad for this because I like doing the velocity a little bit more. And we're just going to do a little archway on that. And changing the note as well. Not the octave or anything else. I just did kind of what I did in the first one, but just adding a little bit more variety. And I think I like how that's coming out, but once again, I find myself wanting to change the original sound a little bit. Let's do this and add a compression on it, compressor. just so it cuts through a little bit more. Sometimes you can do that with velocity. Sometimes you have to use compression. It really just depends on the situation. So I love that we have all of these tracks for the drum machine designer out on their own individual tracks, so I can continue to work on them. If if I like something, I can just make some small adjustments with MIDI, or I can come out here and do some bigger things with audio and route it to reverb. Okay, so this is a brief look as an introduction to the step sequencer. Really now the sky's the limit for what you can do with this. So it's nice how we have this as a pattern. We could come through if we wanted to and make this like a default pattern. We could save it so we could use it in other projects. And so there's a lot of stuff we can do with this in terms of that. Let's actually, what I want to do real quick, let's go to here and let's save pattern. And we'll just do it like that. So that's fine. So now I can always come back to that. Let's go back out here for a second and we'll do drums. So now we have this as I just load up this pattern. Yeah, 808 flex. That's about right. I'm going to come back and just reload mine. But I want to see what you can come up with this using this tool. I want to see what you can do with it and what types of simple 4-bar or 8-bar patterns that you can come up with in terms of the percussion. So do it. I mean, share the link with me, but don't just look at this and say, oh, cool, that can do so much. I actually want to see what you're going to come up with in terms of how you might use this tool. So that's your homework. Hope you enjoyed this look at this tool. We need to do an advanced one now so that you can see some of the more advanced features of this, because there's so much depth to this. We've just started really getting into it and looked at the surface of this tool. But I hope you find this useful, and I hope that you've taken something away from this.